Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to begin the meeting with a karakia. Whakatau ho ki te uru, whakatau ho ki te tonga. Kia makina kina ki uta, kia matara tara ki tai. I he aki ana, ti atakura, hi toi, hi huka, hi hohu, ti he mariora. I'd like to extend a welcome to the panel members. Deputy Mayor Neville Atkinson from the Waimakariri District Council, Councillor Sarah Templeton from Christchurch City Council, and Councillor Nicole Reid from the Selwyn District Council, and I'm Councillor Grant Edge from Canterbury Regional Council, and been elected to chair this meeting today. The panel members are members of the Greater Christchurch Partnership, and we're deliberating today for the Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan 2025 to 2035. And just a note to advise too that the representatives of the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee will also be deliberating for that committee this afternoon on this plan as well. I'd like to welcome any councillors online. No one online at the moment. Welcome staff present here today. We've welcomed Catherine Trott. Welcome, Catherine. Also, like to welcome Len Fleet, Stephanie Syme, and Sonia Pollard, and also our secretarial support staff, Oliver Neal and Vivian Org, here today as well. And online we have Stuart Gibbons from the transport team as well. And greetings to anybody from the public who are listening in today as well. I've been informed that there is a quorum present, and I'm pleased to declare the meeting open. No apologies have been received. Are there any conflicts of interest today? None. Then we'll get on to item 4.1, which is on page 8 to 76 of our agenda, and that covers the unconfirmed minutes. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Templeton, seconded by Deputy Mayor Neville Atkinson. I just wanted to say for those minutes, and really noting on page 13 that these unconfirmed minutes cover both the Monday the 18th and Monday the 25th. On note 8 on page 13 there, just down at the bottom, procedural motions. Just to note that I was absent from the meeting on the 25th of November, and Councillor Templeton was appointed chair for session 5 and session 6. I've read the submissions of session 5 and 6 and acknowledge the additional notes provided at the hearing on the 25th that have been incorporated into these minutes. And the additional notes presented at both of those hearings for the November the 18th meeting, it's on pages 16 to 52, and for the meeting on Monday the 25th, those additional notes, page 53 to 76. So the motion's been put that confirm the minutes of the Greater Christchurch Partnership Hearing Panel meeting on both those days, the 18th and the 25th of November. And all those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 5.1, which is the Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan deliberations, and 2025-20 35. And I'd like to invite Len Fleet and Stephanie Symes to come to the table. Well, they're already at the table. Welcome. And Sonia as well. If you'd like to speak and just sort of brief us a little bit about the report and some of the things that are in there for us.
Thank you, tēnā koutou kata. Len Fleet from Environment Canterbury. Page 77 of the agenda is where the report sits. That covers the procedure that we're dealing with today. I'm going to start with a wee bit of housekeeping, a wee bit of an apology, I guess, in some ways, that we tell you in all the documentation and the officer's report that there's not much substantively changing in terms of the draft RPTP, and then we go and present you with a agenda that has a copy of the draft RPTP that has lots of red markings in it. And I want to just say at the start, don't be daunted by that. A lot of that is to do with typos and changes to make the language better in the document that as we've gone through, we've realised that there's better ways to say some of the things that we're saying in there. So a lot of those changes in there relate to that. So please, if you looked at that and you thought, well, there's a lot to do here in terms of what we're dealing with, perhaps it's not as daunting as that. Page 77 of the agenda alludes to the officer's report that has been prepared in response to the submissions. You'll recall way back in November when the hearings were held, the initial idea was that we got through this and did things, had the deliberations in December. In the interim, a few externalities impacted on how we were able to deliver that, and we've had a number of a submission from NZTA that referred to a number of changes that they were working on during the process of developing the plan. For instance, the NZTA released in September. You'll recall we went out with the draft plan for consultation in September. NZTA released a new development guidelines for writing RPTPs in September. So we've really included a lot of the stuff that NZTA has been asking for in the plan and amongst all those changes. Also, in late November, in fact on the 18th of November, which I think is the same day we started the actual hearings process for submissions, NZTA released a discussion document on increasing the private share of public transport operating expenditure. So a lot of the stuff that is within both the development guidelines and the discussion document have been incorporated into the new plan, because effectively this is the new new environment that we're working in. So we've made some of those changes in the and recommended some of those changes through the officer's report. Many of the changes, as I say, relate to typos and clarification. You'll see that we've included, I think it's on page 83 of the agenda pack, a reader's notes that accompanies the officer's report, and it points to table 5.1 of the officer's report, which basically lists the key changes that we're recommending in the plan, or to the draft plan, and they're basically essentially four areas that we are changing. It's to update the regional public transport plan with the new NZTA guidelines on increasing private share of public transport expenditure, which were released in November. We're also updating any references to the Sustainable Public Transport Framework, which is now being referred to as the Land Transport Management Amendment Act 2020, which was a submission made by NZTA that we should basically get the terminology right on that. We're also making some suggestions or updates in response to submissions from territorial authorities that they principally relate to the section, I think it's section 4.6 of the draft plan, which was dealing with infrastructure. That's been changed in response to new writing from, or a new piece from our territorial authority partners. We've also made a couple of suggestions on changes to the plan itself that were suggested from the Ministry of Education, particularly in relating to school bus services, and from Orion, who suggested that we look at including infrastructure providers when we go out and consult and deal with people in new developments and areas of new developments, and that infrastructure providers, including Orion and the likes of telecommunications people, actually have a role that they should be highlighted in amongst not only just the developers and the territorial authorities. So we've made that suggestion in the officer's report. There's also changes in terms of the timing of improvements to a number of our proposed changes to PT in response to the released National Land Transport Program 24 to 27. These relate specifically to areas of the plan where we essentially marked it. There were changes to services, and they were marked subject to funding. In a number of cases, that funding has not come through in the 24-27 NLTP. So we've basically noted when we expect that funding to come through, and you'll have seen that in a couple of points in the new RPTP document that we've provided. Table 5.1, therefore, is probably the crux of the main changes that you're going to consider today. As I say, Table 5.2 in the officer's report deals with the minute changes, the typos, the changes in comprehension and things like that. So we'll also obviously have a discussion around the passengers travelling with pets on public transport policy. As you'll note, the recommendation essentially is to retain the policy within the document, and that will be subject to conditions under the Code of Conduct. Is it Code of Conduct or Code of Conduct? Metro Code of Conduct. Yeah. So, and that's covered in the officer's report. Effectively, as I've been noting, the Table 5.1 is the point where you will consider the substantive changes, and effectively we will sit here, and if there are any questions that you have in relation to any of the issues that are in Table 5.1 or anything that you see in the plan, you can direct your questions at the staff, and we'll see if we can provide you with a simple and easy answer.
Thanks, Len, for that. What I'll do is we'll take the recommendations on page 77 in parts. We'll deal with recommendation 1 first, then have a broader discussion on that, and then we'll move on to recommendation 2, and that's an opportunity to look at any issues that we might have, and then we'll take recommendation 3 and 4 together. That's the plan. Right. Okay. So we're going to suspend? Yes. Okay. Well, in order to do what we'll do that is we'll just I'd like to suspend standing orders, and it's just up there on the screen, and it's suspending standing orders section 13. Yeah, I'll move that. Seconded by Councillor Templeton. So basically, what that means that we can speak more than once, and so all those in favour of that? Aye. Carried. Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll put up recommendation 1. Yes, sorry.
Just with the recommendations that are there, when we've got consider the considers it,
Yep.
and then approves. So just working out where we propose amendment. Is it just during discussions and things, and we work out whether we want those changes, and is that after we've voted on considers, before?
Yeah.
Because
I think probably
there's some minor typo things that I've still got, plus actually some slightly more substantive stuff.
the consideration will sort of go through everything pretty much.
Yeah.
And then which just talks about the report that we presented with, and then I think item resolution 2 will be the time to suggest any changes. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So resolution 2 is the time to make any proposed amendments to the
Things that we don't agree beforehand, I guess.
No, so beforehand we'll go through. It's pretty much question time. I think resolution 1, but I mean you could.
It just seems odd for us to pass a resolution that says we will consider something.
Yeah.
That's all. Like it's staff saying we should go and consider something. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a recommendation for us to pass, I wouldn't think.
No. It's just
Okay.
it's considers the draft. So I think that's
cool.
And then what we'll do. So we'll put that resolution, and then we'll have discussion. And we won't move on till we're happy with the discussion. Okay, so if do I have a mover for recommendation 1? Councillor Atkinson. Oh, and we. Councillor Temple. So what this is enabling us to do is to consider the information that we've been presented with, included within 5.1.1 primarily. But I think we will consider all of the information that we're presented with, pretty much in the contents. We'll go through the contents just so that everybody's, any queries that people might have up to 5.1.1. Is that clear? Okay. So it's been put, moved. So we'll now open for discussion. Are there any matters related to? Well, first of all, if we just have a quick look at the content sheet on page 2 and page 3 of the report, and what I'm thinking of doing is that we primarily go through items really starting from the reader's notes right through to 4.8, and then when we get to 4.9, we might just take a pause and discuss the issues related to passengers travelling on pets, which is a new proposed policy. So 4.9 and 10 we'll kind of make sure that we really understand what's happening there, and then we'll go on to the reporting officer's recommendations 5.1, 5.2. Which we'll do primarily as part of the second resolution. Okay, so are there any issues that people would like to talk about? Actually, just briefly, has everyone read the reader's notes and just an explanation of what's happening there? So it's just describing the agenda items, and then table 5.1. When we get to that, that will basically enable us to check out and confirm the things in terms of what's in blue, what's in green, all of those sort of things, which is really some of the information that Len has already explained to us about why the changes have been made. Okay. So in terms of background information, is everyone okay with that? And we have had an explanation of the changes that have been made. Is there any further clarification required on that, Councillor Taylor?
Thanks so much. Just given that this is a really high-level plan and that much of the feedback that we got was on things that were more specific, so to do with, a route extension through Aranui or the number 29 being more frequent for Burnside High School or those kind of things. What feedback are we giving to submitters on when they might be able to have more input into those specific changes?
In terms of feedback to submitters, we're staying in touch with submitters in terms of we've notified them that the process is ongoing. We haven't necessarily gone back to individual submitters and said, if you've submitted on a route extension up Clifton Hill or something, that the process will be handled through the network review that's going to happen in the next few months.
Oh, sorry for that. It's completed by June 20. Sorry, it's completed by June 2026. But sorry, I'm thinking on my feet here. So we could notify those people that have put specific kind of network queries. You're right. We've got quite a lot of those and some really rich data. So we could contact them to explain the process from here around the business case developments, and it will feed into the network review. And essentially, we will be going out to engage with the communities next year.
Yeah, thanks. Because I think one of the things is that we want to acknowledge their concerns, and what happens sometimes is that people get a response going, "Oh, these were the changes made, and this is the plan," and they go, "Oh, we've been ignored," rather than having an acknowledgement from the panel. And I think it would be nice to, if when the letter goes out, I mean, I don't know if it's just ECAN that sends it or the hearings panel or just whoever that says, "Thanks so much. We note that people put in things on network stuff or on a slightly different issue. These are processes that are happening with those at the moment. Please stay engaged," and that's where those things will be addressed. And I don't know whether the data from this carries over into that, or they need to make a separate submission, and you'll need to let them know, because they might go, "Oh, well, I've already submitted. I don't need to do it again," kind of thing. So,
yeah, just to clarify, it will be we're doing a meta-analysis essentially. So we're taking all the feedback that we've got through different channels, this being a key one at the moment, and feeding that into the process. But we're expecting, obviously, it's another opportunity for people to engage with us when we go back out to the community. But we want to definitely reflect the feedback that we've already heard.
and just a clarification. So, and then you mentioned before the fact that the officer's report and in the section mentions that there's been no changes made based on resident feedback. Were there changes that you considered based on resident feedback but decided not to go ahead with? Sort of what kind of things might have been a bit close, those kind of things, and maybe it was around the vision and stuff, but from my perspective, it's odd not to make any changes based on submissions. So
that essentially comes back to I guess the plan is many things to many people, and it's people have seen it as an opportunity. People see it as an opportunity to come to ECAN with everything they want to see done in public transport. The plan itself, the document itself, and we've been quite clear during the process that it's a refresh of a 2018 plan, and we're trying to get it up to a standard that it meets the requirements for from NZTA in particular. So what we're effectively trying to do is produce a new plan that covers that. Those elements such as individual changes to routes, people saying that they want rail, for example, those are things that effectively can't be handled necessarily through an RPTP. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've made a couple of recommended changes, in particular the one from Ministry of Education regarding school bus, our school bus policy, and also from Orion regarding how we deal with new developments, areas of new development, and who we talk to in there. So there were some changes, but generally the plan as it stood and the policies as they stood still covered a lot of what were requested by people.
And is that because you did, the pre-consultation kind of engagement stuff, so you knew the kind of things that would be likely that people would want? Yeah, so like the pets on buses kind of stuff there was pre-engagement on that to work out what you might put in the draft.
Yeah, that's right. So there was really extensive pre-engagement with regards to the pets on public transport. So we talked to stakeholder reference groups. We took a really open approach there, a really exploratory approach. So we did 2 workshops with the public transport stakeholder reference group and the accessibility reference group, and we really looked at what their key concerns were. Sorry. Yeah, that's better. We took that really exploratory approach to gather the information in a really open way. And then we talked to specialists. Based on those conversations, we then talked to specialists. We talked to people in the Muslim community. We then also went out to operators and drivers to gather their feedback. And then we had extensive conversations with all the PTAs and got all their staff information. They were really generous and they shared all their operational information and all their monitoring and evaluation information. And so all of that shaped the process of the consultation that we did with regards to pets. And there was one small change actually with respect to how we would have approached things like the 1 pet per person. So one of the feedbacks that we got was that it seemed silly to limit to 1 pet if you could fit 2 small pets in a carrier, for example. So people gave the example of if you wanted to take 2 kittens to the vet, and it seems silly to have to carry them in separate carriers. So we made an amendment saying that it would be, there'd be no additional impact if you had 2 small pets in 1 carrier. So it's 1 carrier per person as opposed to 1 pet per person if it was in a carrier.
Yeah, I think that's really useful, and I think the fact that there have been some minor changes like that probably should have been highlighted in that front piece, just because otherwise people are like, oh, look, they didn't even, but why bother submitting? They say they didn't make any changes, kind of thing. Yeah, and thanks for putting the additional information from the other PTAs in the report for us, because we talked about that during the hearings, and good to see that. And it's sort of analysis of what's been happening in the other areas. So thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Nicole?
Thanks for that. Sarah, I just want to back up. Those are exactly my thoughts of asking what was happening with all that information that we were getting given, because it was a really rich information. There was a lot that people have sent through. So it is good that you guys are capturing that. It's unfortunate. I mean, it's not part of this process, but at least it's, any opportunity that people have got to be able to put things through, and it's good information for us to see as well. So thank you that you're going to use that.
Thank you. I just to get back to where we were there. So basically, I'm going to get to page 19 shortly, which is kind of we can go through that a wee bit more closely. But so the background information's pretty clear, the changes made and why they were made, and the strategic alignment with various on page 6 and 7. There's an explanation about the roles and responsibilities. And the role of the Greater Christchurch Partnership. Maybe just go through at the top. No, I'm looking at page 8. Or, I
think it's 86 of the agenda.
yeah, if we go with this, we're looking at the staff. No, we're looking at the introduction and background information at the moment. So I'm looking, which is the staff report. Yeah, and there's two numbers for the confusion. I've what I've done is suggested that in some key places that will refer to the number of the report, which is rather than the agenda number. Is that so? Rather than page, for example, 88 of 304, we'll go to.
It's just that normally at council we'd be looking like we'd have some questions on the staff report, but then we'd actually start addressing things within the plan document.
I just want to get. I want to
Yeah.
I want to get to that, but I just want to make sure that in that first preliminary stuff that there are no further issues that people want to raise in that. It explains the consultation engagement process, so we're all pretty clear on that, and it also explains the issue of the passengers travelling with pets on train. That's 3.2 on page 11, or page 90 of the 340. What's the easiest way to do that?
I would say use the agenda item pages.
Okay, we'll go. So what we'll do is we'll refer to the agenda page, which is I'm now on page 90. Okay, and just moving on then, it gives some information about the stakeholders and how the stakeholders were engaged with. And at the top of page 91, it talks about a summary of the early engagement activities. So workshops were held with a couple of groups. There was an accessibility reference group and a public transport stakeholder reference group with surveys and things like that. And it really talked about the fact that the draft policy, this is 3.2.4, that first paragraph, should be a succinct high-level statement with operational conditions forming part of the Metro Code of Conduct. And it acknowledged that this would allow for timely response to any changes that might be required over time based on customer feedback, without the need to undertake a variation to the regional public transport plan, which will become a statutory document. And we go on to that, and it gives some information about the feedback from those. I suppose really noting that some feedback was also provided from the drivers, and it gives a table there on page 92 where there was a 53% response of opposition to the pets from the drivers, and then there was also feedback on about allergies and other things that people were concerned about. The other issue on page 93 that I've picked up really just as a commentary on the second bullet point. Well, actually, I'll start 3.2.5, just for information about what other public transport authorities do. and passengers are permitted to travel with pets. This is the pet issue, on pets and public transport in Auckland, Wellington, Nelson, Dunedin, and Manawatu, Whanganui. And they all have sort of slightly different approach to implementing pets on buses. And the interesting thing is that there's no current monitoring of the number of passengers travelling with pets on public transport at any of the public transport authorities. But it was generally agreed by them that whilst the policy is anecdotally popular and appreciated, it is used minimally, and no drop in patronage has been noted in the use through those authorities. So I'll just get now to the actual consultation summary document on page 94. And that just gives a series of factual information about the analysis that staff have made on the report. 800 submissions were received, and about 75%, this is on 5.1.1 on 96, 75% of submitters indicated they were in strong support of the plan, answering yes or yes, I have some suggestions of concern. And we'll come to, so we'll just carry on. The response to submissions on page 9, top of page 98, it's just describing there that the issue related to pets is just an amendment there. It is item 4.9 rather than 4.3. And on the second paragraph there, it's 4.9.3, not 2.3. Just for your information. So we'll come to that in a wee minute. So on 4.5.4 on page 99, the recommendations that following the analysis of feedback provided, the majority of submitters are in support of the plan and officers do not recommend any changes to the draft RPTP following consultation. There's also advice that the PT Futures is a separate operational process and network enhancements have been captured and we've fed into the development of the detailed business case, which will confirm service improvements across the network for delivery over the next 3 to 9 years, which adequately responds to the issues raised by submitters. And I think, Councillor Templeton, that was some of the issues that we're talking about before, in terms of the next stage is analysis and moving forward with picking up those things that people have commented on that are outside the broader higher level policy document and swing more to operational kind of activities.
Doesn't the actual statement that there'll be no changes is not actually right. If I'm to take the feedback from the staff, it needs to be altered in the fact that there are some changes that will happen due to submissions, or have.
They have.
So actually, the actual statement isn't right.
They're probably not if we could just confirm that they're not substantive or material changes, or
It's the changes to the pets policy.
Yeah, I just like, because we're doing the consideration, do we need to note that there were changes, that staff did make some changes based on submissions or something like that? It's just that, like, just as part of the notes, the committee noted, or the panel noted, that there were changes made by staff ahead of the changes that we're going to make.
Great. Okay, we'll get that. That's 4.5.4. The other thing there is noted too that the detailed design and delivery of the MRT is also a separate process and a further planned business case, and that's picked up further in the document later on in 5.1.1. The draft vision 4.6 there was 800 submissions, and this is page 99. 67% of people supported the vision, and a further 20% supported it but expressed some concerns. So effectively, we're looking at about 87% support of the draft vision. Are there any issues or thoughts about that? We can come back to that. Yeah, well, if you okay, so we'll come back. If you could just we'll come back. You're foreshadowing potential amendment under resolution 2. Okay. So we'll go to 4.7 on page 101. And that covers a little bit what we've talked about at the beginning about issues related to accessibility, inclusiveness of public, and additional suggestions from the submitters. And 4.7.1 on page 101, the first paragraph there. Many of the submitters, or many of the submitted comments relate to operational matters outside the scope of the plan, as previously identified, but we've recorded those, and there were issues related to rail, and just a reference at the bottom of that page 101, the last paragraph there, just to confirm, the Canterbury Regional Council included in its long-term plan approximately 525,000 in year 2 to undertake a market demand and rail utilisation study to investigate regional passenger rail, and the timing of the study will be reviewed through the Environment Canterbury's annual plan 25-26, noting that the National Land Transport Programme 24 to 27 did not include funding for this activity at this stage. And at the top of page, Councillor Templeton.
Just a wee comment discussion around that funding and when funding's available and when it's not. So we're doing this RPTP sort of partway through a term of government, if you like, and there's changes in the meantime. And just making sure that we're not basing everything off current government policies, and that we have our own vision for things we'd like to do, so that things are in place and in the plan for if the government changes, because they do all the time, and so that we wouldn't be waiting years trapped in a plan that wasn't as ambitious as we'd like, so we could make changes straight away. Is that right? Yeah. Cool. Fingers crossed.
Thank you. Yeah, I think because this is a refresh, and then there's another review process, so, you know, but yeah. I'm just capturing some key points in terms of how, sorry, before we get on to the real nitty-gritty. And we've got time. So at the top of page 102, just there's a statement there about the Greater Christchurch Partnership has, and I'm kind of reading this because people who may be online, the Greater Christchurch Partnership has overseen the development of an MRT indicative business case, which many submitters supported and wanted to see progressed. And the partnership adopted the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan in 2024, and this plan focuses on growth and intensification along the recommended MRT corridor to accommodate a population of maybe 1 million people over the next 30 years. And this is seen as city-shaping initiative, and that at this stage the NZTA, and it's the bottom of that paragraph, the NZTA Transport Agency is currently in the process of handing over the work on the MRT detailed business case to the Christchurch City Council to lead the next steps of that process, including the designation of the MRT corridor. So that's there for information. So that sort of deals with a little bit of the rail-related and the bigger picture stuff. The other theme there is service changes, which a lot of people have commented on, probably that most people commenting about service improvements, wanting to see all sorts of things. Again, they'll be picked up at a later date. A draft map, this is further down page 102. A draft map has been included for future service areas in both Greater Christchurch and Timaru. And if you look at the report, page 187, you flick to that. You'll see there that is a proposed Christchurch City network with infrastructure improvements proposed. So that gives a bit of a broad indication of the network that we have. And then the other map that sort of refers to that potential service changes later is on page 192, shows a map of the Timaru on-demand service. So that's sort of a development framework for the future. Just turning over to page 103. Just some comments from feedback from people about better bus stops, seats and shelters and information, all those sorts of things. And just gives a description there about PT Future's business case, identifying sort of 4 areas of infrastructure enhancements, which included bus stop enhancements to improve comfort, but also safety and security, priority lanes, those sorts of things, real-time information, which is improving and being introduced over time, and of course multimodal infrastructure and those last-minute connections. So that's pretty good. There was also themes about vehicle quality. That's the buses, zero emissions fleet issues, and of course the flat fare issues. And as a recommendation there, the fare structure will be decided through the annual plan process. And a summary of feedback and fares was gathered through this process, has been provided to relevant Environment Canterbury staff, and that's an annual plan process. And in fact, the submissions on our current 25-26 annual plan close on the 3rd of April. And of course, those things, the other issue about that is the government's changed policy requiring increased private revenue share, and I suspect it's undoubtedly will see some increases in fare prices in the short term, at least anyway. Then on page 105, it gives a description of the key stakeholder submissions received from NZTA, Selwyn District Council, Timaru District Council, Ashburton District Council on page 106, and also Te Whatu Ora on page 107, and each of those key stakeholders were generally in support of the proposed draft. I'm just wondering if we could just adjourn for a short time before we move on to 4.9. Welcome back, everyone. We're now just before we carry on with 4.9 on page 108 and talk specifically about the bus pets on buses. Just to go back to page 99 and the comment before on 4.5.4 recommendations in the first paragraph there. The note that is where the officers have not recommended any changes to the draft RPTP is specifically related to pets on buses, the issues related to pets on buses. So just to clarify that that's what that was about.
And while they haven't recommended changes to the wording of the policy, they'll probably have some changes to, they've said that they'll have some changes to like maybe the types of things that might be allowed in the code of conduct. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so we'll move to 4.9 on page 108, and that's really giving, and right through to page, all of 4.9 through to page 114, gives an analysis of the comments received from the submitters about travelling with pets. And just at the beginning there on page 108, 4.9.1, just gives a brief description of 753 pet-related submissions. 60% responded positively to support passengers travelling with domestic pets. 28% were against, and the others were about 12% were sort of either neutral or unclear. Councillor Templeton?
You can I just clarify with staff? In the original consultation, it looked, and it says this on page 110, proposing to allow passengers over 16 years old. But then the third bullet point is limit of one pet per adult passenger. When it comes to the adult versus the 16, that's not consistent with other ECAN policies. So we've got youth stuff and things up to 19 and fares and bits and pieces. And I'm just wondering if when you do that eventually, the adult wording it could be per applicable passenger or per passenger over 16 or whatever, because adult just doesn't ring with the 16.
Sure. We can make a note of that. I think that we put that in there because that was consistent with the policies at other PTAs. So we can revise that, make a note. Yep. Yep.
Thank you. That was item 4.9.3 on page 110, and the third bullet. You're querying the use of the word adult. Okay. Are there any other comments that people want to make on 4.9? Just really on page 110 again, the response to submissions. That other cities in Aotearoa and around the world, passengers are allowed to travel with domestic pets on public transport. And there is a precedent from 5 other councils in New Zealand. And comments do indicate a bit of polarisation on the topic. Some submitters against, some and more in support of those people who are submitting. Just that bottom paragraph there. Other councils note that the impact of passengers travelling with pets on public transport has been low. Anecdotally, staff indicate minimal uptake of passengers travelling with pets, and none of the councils, unfortunately, collect data on how many passengers are travelling with pets, and generally note the feedback or complaints have been minimal. And I think that that having that lack of data would be useful as we develop the code, the Metro code. I think it would be good to find out a wee bit more about that. So we'll pick that up later. And then just turning to page 112, obviously in terms of response to submitters, there's some commentary there about the pros and cons that people feel concerned about. So key concerns are sort of related to fear of dogs, allergies, size of the pets, direct contact, those sorts of things. But these issues would be looked at by staff, considering all the comments that we've got in terms of when they're developing the Metro Code of Conduct. We will consider those, look at what other people are doing, and then and then prepare a code as an operational document that over time can potentially be adjusted relatively quickly. In terms of page 113, clause 410, the future conditions, the question was asked how comfortable people would be having leashed and muzzled dogs on Metro bus service, and people travelling with up to 2 pets. So about 51% were happy, or very happy that pets were leashed or muzzled. 31% were unhappy, and 17% neutral. And almost half were unhappy or very unhappy about having 2 pets per adult passenger. But as the commentary said before, that if the 2 pets, for example, in a carrier or whatever, that's probably something that could be done. Page 114, muzzles, the commentary there, the bottom paragraph, muzzles are a standard requirement of by other councils, Auckland Transport, Horizons and Nelson, where leashed dogs are allowed on public transport, but Dunedin and Wellington buses, pets are only allowed in a carrier. The recommendations on page 115, again reiterating that majority of respondents were supportive of customers travelling with pets. And just confirming there, the policy 2.8, which is on page 79 of the draft document. Is the key policy decision that's been made and adjusted. There is a comment there on the further down, about halfway down, that staff are suggesting that the initial proposed conditions form the framework for initial implementation of the policy, but they do support change to 1 carrier rather than 1 pet per passenger to accommodate more than 1 small pet. Noting strong concerns about extending the conditions later to leashed or muzzled dogs, and the consideration of any changes to the initial proposed conditions would be undertaken with caution, so that we are conscious of the polarisation that's going on in the community and the next steps. So just to get to the next steps, if the draft policy is supported through the RPTP, Environment Canterbury staff will then take the detailed risk assessment based on feedback from the public consultation confirm specific mitigations, and draft a set of appropriate conditions for inclusion in the Metro Code of Conduct. And these conditions will then be presented to Canterbury's Council following the outcome of the RPTP. What we'll do now is we'll move. So if there's no specific comments on that, we'll now move to just having a quick look at the reporting officer's recommendations on page 116, item 5.1. And again, noting too that most of those have been explained in terms of responses and changes required by the NZTA new guidelines, and that's the September requirements and the requirements that came out in November about private revenue share. So these changes are predominantly related to funding constraints, delayed delivery in the PT Futures program, and those new guidelines. Are there any issues, Councillor Templeton?
I'm just wondering if, rather than substantive stuff, if this is the place where we just go, hey, actually, there's a couple of other little minor things you might have missed in that space. If this is the time on this table, as opposed to when we have the more substantive discussions over amendments.
I think so. Just well, at least highlight them, and then.
So page 13 of the plan looks at the strategic context and looks at the other documents. The Christchurch City Council document is now called the Otatahi Christchurch Future Transport Strategy, rather than the wording that's in the draft plan currently. So that's one. And where's the other one? Page 96, which is 247 of the agenda, looks at the zero emissions fleet. And it says by mid-2025. That's kind of in a couple of months. And I'm just wondering about taking the timing out there, or saying that we have done it by mid-2025, kind of by the time this is adopted and stuff, rather than saying they will be by mid-2025. They were the two, those kind of minor timing things that I picked up on.
What was the page number again?
That one, it's 247 in the agenda, or page 96 of the actual plan. It talked about, only doing zero emissions from mid-2025, but that's kind of now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just one of those timing things. So I don't know, you guys will probably need to work out what wording before we do the recommendation and stuff like that. Finally, you'll need something in the table.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll just be.
So I don't know how those minor ones are captured, but you guys will do that. Yeah.
You'll be a delegation to the chief executive to create.
Yeah. Okay. It may well just be that the the resolution 4, where there's minor changes made by the chief executive, we can make those. That can be made, as long as we note them. And yeah. Okay. Everyone clear that on as we go through page 216 to 116 to 130.
Just on that in the plan, and it talks about the actions on page 249 requiring bicycle racks. I just wonder if the words that comply should be added to the actions, given what happened just before we started these hearings. I just wonder whether that should be added in there.
Perfect.
Okay. So,
Perfect. I put the word compliant before the words bike racks. That's my one too.
okay. So no. Are there any other sort of minor things that people have picked up? I think it's all, to my mind, all pretty clear of why the changes have been made and that they are, and the rationale. It's good to have the rationale description about why they've changed. So the rationale's generally in all green, and then there's there's links in the areas of blue to other documents. So that's everyone happy with the explanations and the proposed changes that are made or amendments made in 5.1. So we move on to 5.2, and 5.2, as stated, was really just picking up inaccuracies, typographical errors, rewording, and improving comprehension. I just wanted to pick up on page 134, just some revised text on item 22 there. That's the 22 in the column, the left-hand column, about public transport patronage in Canterbury has peaked at 17.4 million trips per year in 2010, and they've significantly risen since the COVID-19, which when it dropped down to about 13 or 9, sorry. So we're now standing at about 14.74 million trips for 23-24, which is all pretty good. Something like 16.8 million kilometres annually, 300 daily buses, and 19.8 kilometres. Councillor Templeton?
Can I just check on that one? It's not, yeah. When we're measuring trips, do we measure trips the same way in 2010 and now? Like, does a trip include your second trip on a thing? Is that one trip, or is it? Yeah.
We do have more through routing services nowadays than we did possibly in 2010, but it's where the person gets on and gets off really, and you'll probably have picked up maybe a few thousand people that were in 2010 that were going past the bus interchange and getting off, but they might have had to double up, but it's just a function of the network. Some people do, some people don't.
Oh no, but it's just the way it's measured is the same. It's the number of times you tap on, right? It's the number of times you tap on. It's okay. No matter how you do it, yeah, cool.
Effectively, it's the number of boardings.
Yeah. Just a note too on page 135, just a description about on item 25 there, related to transport priorities for mana whenua, and how that links in with the Canterbury Regional Land Transport Plan and the Greater Christchurch Plan, which is transport plan. I think it's page 27 of that. Gives a description of accommodating mana whenua issues, and then in terms of Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, Opportunity 4 sort of covers the provision of transport related issues for that.
Is it worth? I mean, this says what we do. What it doesn't say is actually that it doesn't do actually what mana whenua really want, which is an improved service and actually service to the marae and stuff, right? I mean, they've got the aspiration to be better served, And while it talks about, generally like the two urban marae kind of thing, actually that more to Rapaki, further around, Tuahiwi, all of that kind of stuff is still an aspiration for mana whenua that isn't really captured in the conversation in the official documents, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I'm just wondering if we could capture that greater aspiration for connection to marae and sort of kainga nohanga and stuff. That would be, I think, really useful. Yeah.
The wording we used is basically very similar to the wording that was in the regional land transport plan, and we tried to effectively mirror that because that is where you get your funding for improvements to services and things that can take them to these places.
Agree, but it's also like if mana whenua read this document, they go, "That's not what we want," and yet it says this is what we're doing for mana whenua. We've had conversations with them. To most people, that would imply that therefore that's what mana whenua want is in the plan. And I think recognising their aspirations would be useful.
So you in terms of the okay. I mean, it's got PT public transport and PT futures have an important role to play in the wider land transport system to support access and connectivity to support development aspirations for kainga. So you don't think that's enough?
I mean, that just says someone else is going to do it rather than us, because the RPTP does talk about vision and strategic context, and it talks about those kind of things. But mana whenua aspirations don't appear in this document particularly. They just say, "Oh, someone else will deal with the aspirations."
Okay, well,
we'll look at it when we get to the plan.
To that. I mean,
find somewhere
because it's Greater Christchurch Partnership have put that in the spatial plan, endorsed the opportunity for. But anyway, it may well be in the vision statement that we make it very clear that the supporting direction for these things are included in other documents or other strategies such as the land transport plan and the Greater Christchurch spatial plan. Anyway, that we'll come back to that.
Sorry, can I ask a question on that page as well?
Yep.
So we're still talking about 176. So that on the bottom right-hand side of that page, and it's got replace the strike-out text above with the types of public transport that work for smaller urban centres and rural areas is not the same, different for others. I'm just wondering, so it's brought up in one of the submissions around patronage versus coverage of service, and I'm just wondering whether you guys think that maybe speaks to that or not. This it was raised in a submission that it was that it looked like ECAN was basically just looking at having patronage numbers as opposed to making sure there was good coverage of their network, and that would be going into smaller areas. Not sure. Just asking.
There was. I'm trying to find it actually.
Sonia, do you want to say?
There's a comment on.
Sonia's got a comment.
Sorry, Sonia. I'm looking at page 118, item 8, where it talks about ridership and coverage. Has that been covered there? Yeah. Page 100.
Okay.
Page 118. Is that? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I missed.
Page 37 of the. So it's on page 188. Are you on page 188? Does it answer your? Sonia, sorry.
Anyway, because of it, how it sits on the page, but it'll be interesting. But thank you.
Sonia, any?
So yeah, you're right. The 2.6 is trying to talk about the fact that there is wider aspirations outside. So the PT Futures business case, which at the moment is a business case that we're progressing, very much focuses on the greater Christchurch area, and it focuses on the urban area. And so what we're trying to convey here is that there are aspirations wider than that. We don't exactly know what that looks like yet or where that is, but it's kind of highlighting and signalling that actually, therefore, you need to potentially consider different models that you maybe wouldn't within an urban context.
Thank you. Okay, so
Around the wording of that, if we're questioning it and don't understand it, it probably needs some better clarification in the wording. Because if it's being questioned here, then the public certainly aren't going to understand what it says.
I think it's more explicit on the 188 than where I was referencing.
page page 118 gives a description of what ridership means and what coverage means. How do you feel about that?
Again, that's council speak. It's not public speak. If you got someone to read it off the street, would they understand it? And I don't believe they would.
Yes, I don't. I mean, I suspect it's pretty much in the urban areas is ridership, but that also indirectly cover my understanding. There's a bit of coverage because it's got a coverage over the city, which is the PT Futures, Resta Network sort of stuff. But then outside that, you've got coverage. Where do we go in terms of broader public transport services, which are almost the domain of the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee, but there's a synergy between everything. But anyway, is there what Councillor Atkinson's wondering is that if it could be just a note about how that could be conveyed a little bit more in plain English, if possible, so that it's easy for people to understand what that's talking about. Okay, we'll just make a note of that. Okay, where are we up to? So we were just going through the attachment 5.2. Anything else that people have picked up on 5.2, which is the amendments and things?
Is it easier to step through the document?
Probably. Well, the changes are recorded in 5.1 and 5.2, and then they are so the same information, but it was easier to follow. But I mean, we can go. We'll do this, and then we can go back if it's easier to pick up. On the you're written on the actual document. Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
No.
It's probably a me problem. But
No, it's okay. All right. We'll do that then, just in case people have got some things. I just so we've come to the end of 5.2, and then the next few pages are, for example, on page 148. There is a a reference there, which is the text related to the attachment 5.1.2. And if you look at page 165 of the agenda, you'll see reference on page 165 to some new content in the middle of that page. That's page 165. And there's a comment there that says new content under a new heading called increasing the private share of public transport operating expenditure, and that, instead of it fitting in there, it's just provided here on page 148. So that's the text that will be slotted into that position.
And that's effectively because the size of that block of text
Yep.
can't fit on that page.
You right with that, Nicole? Okay, and similarly, that was Appendix B C1, and Appendix B C2. The reference there is on page 42 of the, it's actually on page 193 of the agenda. So if you go to page 193, you'll see at the top of page 193 that all of that page has been deleted. So the information that replaces that on 4.6 is now on page 149 and 150 and 151. So it's covering those issues that. Len, that covers the issues that the TAs and all of that sort of stuff that you talked about at the beginning. That all comes into
Yes,
play.
those 3 pages were effectively written by our territorial authority partners to go in the plan. It represents what is in their long-term plans and annual plans. So,
Right. Everyone okay with that? Okay. Okay. Well, Councillor Reid, you had some comments that you had picked up in the actual attachment 5.1.2. Do you want to go through anything that you've picked up there?
So page 167, so with that new network branding, there has been comments brought up about the actual colours and people being able to differentiate between the buses when there's multiple ones turning up. Have we thought about how we could help with that so that people, how it was before with having the yellow buses, the different coloured buses, were quite easy to see what was coming and what was there.
Stu, can we ask you to make a comment on that, please?
Sure. The solution to that issue is with the progressive replacement of buses on our fleet. So all our new buses come with much larger and much brighter displays on the front and the sides of the buses, making it substantially easier to recognise the bus that you're looking for. Council ECAN has no intentions at this stage or plans to look at changing the current livery of the vehicles. The previous multicoloured network that we had 8 different types of bus livery on our network. And while it's true there were some customers that liked it, there were also a lot of customers that didn't. And what is inevitably the case with public transport, can't please all the people all the time. Ultimately, several years ago, Council made a decision to change the livery to what it is today. And there were a bunch of reasons for that in terms of consistency, cost, and the fact that we wanted to not have operator brands on the network. We went to market and we didn't know who we were going to get, and so we wanted to standardise on a network brand. And on the whole, notwithstanding that there are still some people who would prefer to go back to the old multicoloured network, the new branding has been well bedded in across the city.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Templeton.
Thanks, Stuart.
Stuart.
One of the things that I think people mentioned about the colours, it was the visibility and knowing which bus is coming, like Councillor Reid said. So do we have a time frame for when the fleet or most of the fleet will be converted to make that easier? And I say this as someone who fully understands, like I don't have bad vision, but I'm aging and your eyes get a bit funny, and seeing what number bus is coming is not that easy to flag them down and things if you're not at the bus exchange. So do we have a time frame?
Yeah, so we'll next be going to market in 2026 for a network contract change in 2029.
Yeah.
But based on the age of our fleet, we won't expect to see all of our legacy fleet replaced until 2035.
Okay, so that's quite a long time. So that's another 10 years. Is there a way, like if we were to put an action in one of the policy areas around accessibility to ask for an exploration of ways to make the bus fleet more easily identifiable, the numbers or whatever, more easily identifiable on the current ones? And that could be a low tech, a number, actually like a number plate that goes on the front of the bus at the beginning of the day or whatever. I don't know. But actually, people really do struggle with knowing which bus is which. And I think 10 years is a bit long to wait. If we put an action in, would that be okay?
Well, we've done that work already, Sarah, with the Accessibility Reference Group last year. We explored options for improving the visibility of buses, and that led to us changing the brightness on the displays on a number of our older buses. We could change the brightness. So quite a few of our older buses have brighter displays now as a result of that work. We also experimented with having a yellow strip on the front of the bus for general visibility. We trialled that for some time, and that hasn't really delivered any significant benefits. So we've actually done a lot of work already in looking at that.
But we were still getting submissions from people saying we don't know which bus is coming.
No, I understand that, and we will always get that. Even when we had multicoloured buses, people were challenged sometimes because some of the buses were Go Bus buses, and some of the buses were Red Bus buses, and some of the buses were Ritchie's buses. So even though our core routes were coloured routes, most of our routes were not coloured routes. So you have to take account of the fact that not every route had its own colour.
Okay, so while you dealt with the accessibility group, have you talked to just people who aren't necessarily in a disability action type group because they're not, formally disabled and things, but just have, aging, normal, vision degeneration kind of stuff, or glasses? Because that's a lot of the population.
I'm just wondering. I mean, it's kind of like an operation. It is an operational issue, but I'm wondering the other operational issue that that may assist is that we're steadily rolling out the on-time. What do you call that? The on-time information at bus stops, real-time information, and that's being rolled out as well. So it may well be that I don't know what the technology is for that, but I think as Stuart says, a lot of work's been done to ensure that whole branding thing is up to speed. I mean, buses these days have advertising on them and all sorts of things, and the brightness issue. But yeah, I mean, it's noted that it's on the radar pretty much all the time in terms of talking to people, and some work's been done. But if we just note that that's something that's is part of that concern by people in the submission, I'm not in the submission process, but it also gets raised from time to time in LTPs annual, where people express concern. Yeah, so I think that's probably whether or not we need to do it as part of this RPTP process, even though it has got the single network branding.
We do have quite a lot of other operational things within here. It's just a sentence mentioning it somewhere might be good.
Specifically trying to resolve a branding issue.
It's not a branding issue; it's an accessibility issue.
Yeah. If you guys could just see where that could be fitted, if at all within this, or it's a note that we note, expressing really further consideration to that issue. Nicole, would just any other issues on the actual main 5-point attachment, the main document? Anything that you've picked up that's because all the changes in red are actually in those 5.1, 5.1 or 5.2.
Yeah, I mean, there's some spelling mistakes and stuff that I've picked up, which I will feed through. I'm still looking just on other things that I've found.
Well, I think we might we just might adjourn for a couple of minutes. Welcome back, everyone. We've taken the opportunity just to canvass potentially some wording. What we'll do now is we have now considered the resolution 1. So we'll just go back to page 77. And we have a mover and a seconder for that. We've considered the draft Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan 2025-2035 and the officer's hearings report and the proposed recommendations included within that report, including attachment 5.1.1. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. We'll now move to resolution recommendation 2. And do I have a mover for recommendation 2? Moved by Councillor Templeton and seconded by Councillor Atkinson, or Deputy Mayor Atkinson. And now we'll have any discussion. This is an opportunity to approve the proposed amendments and also consider any further amendments that the panel may have. Councillor Templeton.
So do we need to formally table then? I mean, we've got some wording and things for these proposed amendments that we've got.
Yes.
I don't know who wants to own each of them. But there's the one for the additional actions for... Oh, should we start with the vision? Start at the beginning of the plan and move through? There's an amendment to be tabled to replace the word seamless with accessible in the vision.
In the vision.
On page 18. So I'm happy to move that amendment. Neville's happy to second.
We'll just... So there's a proposed amendment to 2.1. No, it's our vision on page 18. To remove the word seamless and replace it with accessible. Do we need to write that whole vision document statement?
No.
We should specify.
And just cross it out, strike it out. What we'll do is we'll just continue to list any amendments and take them all at the end.
Okay. So
Any discussion on this particular issue?
Taking them all at once.
Okay, we'll take it. Okay, all right. Okay. Are there any further amendments, panel members?
So policy 1.8.
Councillor Templeton?
Yeah. Policy 1.8.
On page 66.
66. There's some wording that's been prepared around using the ticketing system goes. They're to leverage the capabilities of the national ticketing system to review fare policies, and I can't read down a bit further. And zone options, for example, the investigation of a Christchurch Central City zone.
So there's a proposal for an additional action bullet point. Under policy on trials and innovation to include considering. So I'm just wondering if we actually state add bullet point.
Oh, it says expand the actions.
Expands the actions.
That expands. Yeah. Okay. That expands.
Or adds an additional action.
I think that would be
Might
better.
be more accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
There's an additional action.
Yeah.
expands an additional. Adds an additional
Adds an
action.
additional-
This feels worth doing now.
Should we italicize?
Wasn't sure for the first 2 days.
1,000 cats.
To include considering leveraging the capabilities of National Ticketing Solutions entities to review fare policies and zone options, for example, the investigation of a Christchurch City Central Christchurch
City zone.
Central City Zone.
Take the first city out.
Yep.
Christchurch.
Take the first city out.
Oh, take the first one out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about the central city. Yeah.
Yep. Christchurch Central City Zone.
And yes, there are more.
That's right. That's good.
Yep. Okay. Right. 2.3 then. That's Councillor Templeton. You had another.
Yep.
Suggestion.
So, and I can't remember which policy this ended up in. Sorry, everyone else is writing things down though. But it's about the additional criteria for choosing on-demand services,
Page 6. Yeah. Page 61.
which enabled another criteria for new areas rather than supplementing existing, where the urban growth and stuff, or the urban form. Population density and general urban conditions would support successful on-demand services. Yeah, so an extra bullet point for criteria there, because that would enable places that are growing rapidly or densifying, such as Ashburton or Rolleston or those kind of places, to have a service that doesn't currently exist. Yeah.
I think, again, if we just say adds an additional criteria.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
To include, which will basically, the new criteria will be to include the consideration of a new service where population density and general urban conditions would support successful on-demand services.
Yeah. And then policy 2.8 on page 230 of the agenda is where I've written it. I don't know which the other one is, which was the pets one. It was just adding 2 action points there. One for monitoring, recognising that we haven't been able to get the data from other centres about it, so actually being able to collect data will be really useful. And then a review action as well.
And again, adds an additional action.
Adds 2 actions. Adds actions. Because there are 2.
Yes, additional action. Under policy. And under policy 2.8, customers travelling on domestic pets, to include the monitoring of the number, or monitoring of number of the number.
Of the number of pets.
The number of pets being carried, and to undertake regular reviews of the conditions under the Metro code of conduct.
Just wonder whether that needs to be general again. You're tying it into a number of pets. There's many bits of monitoring you'd want to be doing, not just that one.
Yeah, we just had a general one to start with.
Okay, monitoring of pets being carried. Is that what you're suggesting? Remove, monitoring of pets being carried.
No, monitoring of pets being carried might just be like, the bus drivers are monitoring them, but we actually want to monitor them.
Volume?
Including numbers. So monitoring if pets being monitoring of the monitoring.
Stuart might have something for us.
Stuart,
of the
can I get a
policy,
comment from you?
including-
Just is it the number? Is it appropriate to put the number of pets being carried?
I wonder if what we're trying to establish is monitoring the usage of that facility, i.e. taking pets or buses,
exactly.
as opposed to
It's monitoring
dogs or cats
usage, and that could
Yes,
have different
good.
metrics. Monitoring the usage of the policy.
Yeah. Of pets being carried.
Monitoring usage. Yeah,
And to undertake regular reviews of the conditions under the Metro Code of Conduct.
The other question is, do we want these amendments page order? 'Cause we've got 66,
I think so. If you,
69.
yes. So we're just going to reorder them in terms of page numbers.
Yeah. And there's one more. Sorry. It was the really minor one, though. And it was in policy 2.9, and it was about acknowledging the visibility of the signage on the buses, the work that's underway, because we had multiple submissions on that.
Okay. So that's page 80.
It was the adding an action in there.
Again, adds an additional.
It's action or clarification in the explanation, either or.
I wonder if Sonia might.
Sonia?
Sonia, do you want to say something? I think it might just be in addition to that last bullet point. Yeah?
Okay.
Sorry, what we were proposing is to just add further wording to bullet point 3, which is Environment Canterbury will ensure services are accessible by implementing the procurement and standards in section 4, and something along the lines of ensuring bus destination screens are clearly visible. Does that? Easily visible. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know.
Okay. Sorry, we wanted clearly replaced with easily visible. Yeah. And the wording should just include and ensuring bus destinations we did say screened, but we can keep it at bus destinations. Yeah.
They can do both.
Even if you've got your real-time information coming and it says, there's 2 buses coming in the next minute, as they're going to pass you or whatever, still knowing, being able to see is important.
Okay, so
That's it for my actual amendments. I have a
Yeah.
2 clarification questions on process.
and Councillor Reid, any issues that you might have that we need to attend to? Or related to any proposed amendments? Are you satisfied that at the moment that there are no further amendments required?
I'm fine with that. I just have one question of clarification on one of the pages, page 72 and the 73. So that's the pages of the plan. So it's around the ride hailing apps. It's got a box there on 72, and it's got new technology that sort of hangs there. I'm not sure how it fits. And then on the 73, on the 3rd paragraph down in the first column, there is a similar sort of hanging thing as well, which I'm not sure what that. So just to highlight that and whether. Yeah.
Might want to,
Sorry, it's just the way that we've been able to make the amendment in the document. So the text in the red box is replacing the text that has been crossed out on page 73. So that's why it's left hanging, because it goes straight into that sentence.
Okay. So on page 73, the new technology is also presenting better ways. Yeah. Okay.
That makes much more sense. I was really confused, especially particularly it's on a totally different page.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Templeton?
So I'm just really aware that we're doing this for, our scope is like for the Greater Christchurch area, which is why the 4 of us are here.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 things that kind of come from that. The first is, so there's another group looking at the rest of Canterbury. Is that right?
Yes.
And so if we're proposing changes to that plan, do they have to agree to those changes? For example, the change in the vision statement for it to go through. So does it need a 2-stage process kind of thing before it gets to even to GCP? Those kind of process things, like we're recommending that a few things get changed. What happens if they don't agree?
Could you clarify that, how that works? That we've made some additions today, this morning. The regional transport representatives are meeting this afternoon. Would they be informed about what we've just decided?
Yeah, we can. I think the best thing would be to go have the discussion with them and say, look, this morning, Greater Christchurch Partnership agreed to these things. I don't think there's anything controversial in terms of the changes for the rest of Canterbury and what you've suggested today. So
are they likely to be proposing other changes potentially? Yeah. And so it's so both of those separately go up to the next level to get signed off. Yeah. And so it's the next level that will, if there's any inconsistencies or changes and things, that they will make those changes there. Is that at ECAN? Yeah.
That's good. So basically, the change, the amalgamated changes that are agreed from both parties will come together in a final report to go to GCP and Greater Christchurch.
To go to ECAN.
Sorry.
Yeah, basically you're recommending to GCPC that these things will happen. They'll recommend to RTC, and what they want. Ultimately, it comes to ECAN to make the ultimate decision. But from what I'm seeing, there's not a you're not playing in anybody else's paddling pool or whatever you want.
Okay, and when it comes to the paddling pool, we're Greater Christchurch, and then there's the rest of the sort of regional Canterbury. Where's the rest of Banks Peninsula? Because Banks Peninsula aren't in GCP. Like, they're not within the urban area covered by the Greater Christchurch Partnership in the maps and things. And I know we had submissions from Little River, those kind of areas there. It's a GCP area thing. Do you see what I mean? Like, there's, how does that form?
Oh, sorry. That would formally probably fit under RTC, but yeah.
But have they considered wider Banks Peninsula? Because those submissions came to us, but it's not within our formal scope. So I'm just trying to work out, or is there something that needs noting about, like, the fact that those submissions came to us, and so while they're not formally in the Greater Christchurch urban area, we are the councils that kind of represent that space. I don't know. I'm just trying to work out formally where that sits so that Banks Peninsula doesn't get completely missed off. The map.
I've just been informed that all submissions went to both groups, and so they went to everybody.
But were submitters, for example, directed to the RTC group or the other hearings panel if they had things that weren't in urban Greater Christchurch? Because we heard Little River, right?
Submitters could say which committee they wanted to be heard by.
Okay.
In that process. But Stuart, if you could give us feedback on that.
It's a good question. And as Len pointed out, Little River would fit in with the Regional Transport Committee in the same way that areas in Waimakariri and Selwyn that aren't part of Greater Christchurch would fit in the Regional Transport Committee. So Oxford, Taitapu, those sorts of places are not in Greater Christchurch boundary, but are part of Selwyn and Waimakariri. So they, just as Little River would fit with RTC, so too do they.
And can I just check? So, I mean, the makeup of the hearings panel for the RTC, then, does that include representation from, or are those, do we know that those submissions have been considered by the other hearings panel? Just where the focus is. I just don't want them to be missed.
It includes the Mayor of Huranui District, and there was also submissions from places like Amberley, I think, that were saying that they wanted extensions as well. So I guess it comes in that peri-urban, is that the word?
The hearing panel with Craig Pauling, Mayor Murray Black and Mayor Nigel Brown.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if next time this process is done, maybe some thought, like Banks Peninsula specifically, because it is really only just attached that way, whether the Banks Peninsula part of it could be considered with the GCP stuff, like formally next time, rather than like give the hearings panel the scope just next time this gets done, just so that it doesn't get left or fall between the cracks kind of stuff, if that makes sense.
It does, but
Yeah.
Good, but I mean, either that or they're clearly advised to go to the regional.
Because it just seems like it fits in the non-urban, but the submitters came to us kind of like, so we just need to make that clear for next time. So if something goes in the minutes or whatever, that gets like an organisational action for next time as opposed to formal recommendations from us.
That counts for Darfield and stuff as well, which is the interesting
I
thing.
think that whole well, it is the transportation system outside the Greater Christchurch Partnership and the integration of that within the reasoning behind them wanting this and that and all the other things are probably similar. But yeah, Sonia.
Yeah, so we have made it clear to RTC through the terms and conditions that essentially it was any area outside of Greater Christchurch, which was done by this. But I very much take your concerns around the fact that there are some areas, the Darfields, the Banks Peninsulas, that it may not fit so easily. So yeah, that's absolutely something we can take on board.
Yeah, and submitters came here. Yeah. And I mean, most of the committee probably see, apart from Craig, probably the others probably think that Little River is part of Greater Christchurch. Yeah, so.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then we'll have a discussion. Any further discussion on those proposed amendments? No further discussion? Then can I have a mover for... is it a mover? It's a substitute.
So understanding this, because Councillor Templeton and Deputy Mayor Atkinson moved the original motion, they can't then move the amendments.
Okay.
But we can choose to incorporate them into the original recommendation.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So now we move straight to discussion then.
Okay. So, okay, it's moved. Councillor Templeton and Deputy Mayor Atkinson incorporated into the to make a substantive motion. Is that right? For our second resolution. Any discussion? Any further discussion on those?
Is that what you mean? I don't know if you used different terms. Is that the debate? So that's the debate.
Yep.
I'm keen to do one debate.
Okay.
Kia ora, I just want to start, actually, this is the one debate I'll do, by thanking submitters to start with. It's not an easy document to go through, and so submitters put a lot of time and energy and effort into that. And as staff have indicated, there's a whole pile of rich information that's come through. A lot of it's in more detail than is covered in this plan. But actually, we've made changes based off those as elected members, recommendations for changes to enable some of those more specific ones to happen, which I think is really good. And some of those fit in different processes, PT Futures, MRT business case, all of those things, and that will be captured. I think that some of the changes that have been made to this plan since the last plan and this kind of refresh have been great, and some have been disappointing. So the fact that we've had to remove a lot of the timeframes, our really good ambitious timeframes for getting PT Futures and other changes done, because of the lack of government funding and the changes to the GPS and funding for public transport, which we know is crucial for both our urban areas and peri-urban and broader, is really disappointing, and it feels like a backward step. However, the plan as a whole, does look to the future. It looks to what's needed and what's coming, what's already underway. I think it's great that we've made some changes today. I think the pets will be welcome, but I think the monitoring review is really good. Enabling newer areas that have grown significantly over time, like Rolleston and maybe Ashburton, to be considered for my way through this, I think is a good change as well, a good addition, as well as the potential for having a central city zone, which could enable over time a free fare zone potentially. And of course that would have to go through a process because it would cost, so you need to work out those things beforehand by monitoring the new ticketing system, and then consulting with the community. But putting it in there, acknowledging this is something that could be looked at in the future, I think is a really good start. I think the change in the vision statement to accessible, I think is really good. And accessible is a really broad word, and it should be. We should have good coverage. We should make sure that people with mobility access can get on and off our buses. All of those things. It could be affordable. All of those things come through accessible, and I think putting that word in there is really good to do. And I'll just wind up by thanking staff. You guys do a huge amount of work. Those of you who are in the room and online, to put this together. It's not easy. There's a stack of submissions to go through and a stack of elected members, various whims and whimsies to cater for as well. So I thank you for that. I know everyone really wants the best for Greater Christchurch and the broader region, and looking forward to this eventually being signed off and things coming to fruition in the end.
Thanks, Sarah. Do you have any comments, Councillor Reid? No? Right. Okay. I'll just say briefly, again, thank you very much to the staff for putting this together. I think it was fairly, although I didn't find it too confusing. I thought it was really, really good to clarify the changes to the actual document, the actual plan, and putting that together for the upfront stuff and 5.1, 5.2, and the changes that had to be made, which were largely in response to directions outside our control. And we've responded to those, and the plan remains reasonably intact. But we obviously have to deliver some of these new changes in terms of the guidance from the government, and we're doing that. And then going forward, it's a refresh, bringing that new direction into the plan. And I think the issue that a lot of people had commented on, or the issues a lot of people had commented on about service delivery and all those things to do with the level of service and what they would like in terms of route selection, all of those sorts of things. And in terms of the pets on buses, I think by the couple of things that we've endorsed or considered, I think the Metro Code of Conduct will be the next phase, obviously, and I think that will bring in the comments that have collectively been given by the submitters, and the experiences of those councils around the country, or the PTAs around the country that have already instigated pets on buses. So I think going forward it'll be good. But yeah, in terms of the changes here, we're obviously seeking to approve the amendments, and then we've proposed, thank you very much to councillors and panellists for working through this across this morning and coming up with some key key amendments that enable staff to consider things going forward. And I agree, Councillor Templeton, the just the change of the word to accessible in the vision statement. I think it's really, really good, because it means so much to so many people, not only physical accessibility, but also to improve disabled access, for example, or impaired people, but also I'm thinking of the elderly, but it has a lot of repercussions, I think, or implications. Okay, that's been put. All those in favour of the resolution, I'll just read that again. Approves the proposed amendments to the draft Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan 2025-35 document, as outlined in section 5 of the draft Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan, and in consideration of the officers' hearings report attachment 5.1.1. And of course, we are now approving some additional amendments listed through 2.1 through to 2.5. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. Carried. Thank you very, very much. We'll now move to recommendation 3, and we'll take recommendation 3 and recommendation 4 together. We'll just put them. We'll put them up on the screen. So recommendation 3 and 4. 3 recommends to the Greater Christchurch Partnership, which is our next job, that it endorses the amended draft Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan 2025-35, which is attachment 5.1.2 in the marked up version within our report, and forwards it on to the Canterbury Regional Council for approval and adoption. And Resolution 4 delegates to the Chief Executive of the Canterbury Regional Council the ability to correct any minor errors or to make changes of minor effect to the draft Canterbury Regional Public Transport Plan 2025-35, identified before it is recommended to the Canterbury Regional Council. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Atkinson, and seconded Councillor Nicole Reid. Councillor Reid. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's good. So got a Karakia. And the next meeting, there is no next meeting. And that's good. And I'll just finish off with a Karakia. Get the right one. Anuhia, ki te uru tapanui o tāna, kia watia, kia mama, tinako, tia tinana, ti wairua i te ara takata, koia e rongu, whakaaria, aki ki runga, kia tina, humie, hue, takie. Thank you very much for your